We know you're looking for a truck. And of course, you're looking for a great deal. We've got the trucks and we've got the deals. Get a brand new 2023 Ford F-150 STX 4x4, just $475 per month. And right now, you can get $1,000 in free Ford accessories. And you can only find these at Jim Bass Ford, Houston Hart at Arden Road, or 24/7 at jimbassford.com.
Well, welcome back. This is Joe Hyde. I'm going to be joined here with Yantis Green and our very special guest, Mayor Brenda Gunter, who's been the mayor of San Angelo since 2017, May of 2017. This morning at the city council meeting, the mayor made a very profound statement, and we'd asked her to say it here again. And so I'm just going, without further ado, let's bring the mayor on with Yantis.
I'm glad to still be here, and I can't wait for the mayor to read this statement and get into these details.
I want to start today by encouraging every citizen to file a protest with the appraisal district. If you believe your 2023 tax appraisal of your property is valued dramatically higher than your 2022 appraised value, unquestionably these new appraisals have been shockingly higher than anyone could possibly anticipate. I am working with Drew Darby, hopefully, to come up with a plan that will be acceptable to the appraisal district and the state comptroller. That will not happen, as Drew Darby has said, that all representatives are getting the same complaints that he is getting. And there's a process in place for every county for citizens to work through the problems. That being said, as a mayor, as a city, we have no authority over the Tom Green County Appraisal District or the state comptroller. I would encourage citizens to contact the state comptroller, as he is the person who controls the appraisal district. That being said, I will work with our state legislators in the future to try to find a way to address these disastrous appraisals. We do not know what the parameters were put into the system that created the algorithms. Our land prices do not in any way correlate to the I-35 corridor land prices. Our costs of construction do not emulate the I-35 corridor prices. Factors such as inflation, bidding wars, supply chain issues over the last 2 years cannot be the out-of-the-box issues that have driven up our appraisals. Appraisals should be realistic and in line with some expectation from our citizens as honest and understandable numbers. Today, no one has faith in the system or the appraised values. The system is flawed, the process is flawed. There is no way taxpayers' protests can be done in time to put together a budget plan for the citizens. As citizens and property owners, you should not have to fear tax appraisal season. You should not have to fear losing your home or being taxed out of your home. The system is flawed, and you shouldn't have to go to the bank to take out a loan to pay for your taxes. Again, I am encouraging you to protest your tax appraisal. It is your right to do so. It is your right to protect yourself against unreasonable valuations. As citizens, we need to know how they came up with the appraised values. We do not, as of today, understand the process that was used to create this year's appraised values. What we do know is that they are not reasonable, and citizens have totally lost faith in the process. The state legislators need to make sure that they work aggressively to come up with a plan to ensure that all counties, all cities, all residents feel the system is fair and reasonable.
Well, Mayor, that was, first of all, I think the biggest piece of that's important to understand is you guys got to set the city budget.
Correct.
Based on these appraisals, because they're going to come back and tell you this is how much land, how much property, and the value in this town is. And if you set your tax rate at this particular rate, this is how much money you're going to raise. You're not going to be able to have any kind of credibility in setting a tax rate if people don't think their valuations are fair.
Until the protests are complete and we know what the appraised valuations are in total, we can't set a tax rate, because the legislators also established a maximum amount of growth in property tax dollars that can occur. Right. So they've set that at 3.5%. And looking at the numbers that are out there on individual properties, the 3.5% is a threshold, the highest level we can be at. So people are now going to have to go through the protest, the time, the effort, the energy to try to fight these numbers. And then we're going to have to lower the tax rate to accommodate it. But people write checks with dollar signs on them, not percentages. People have to have money, not a percentage. And it's the dollar amount that's scaring everybody, rightfully so.
We found a possible glitch in the way the appraisals are done, particularly with the land, and you were kind of caught up in this a little bit too.
Well, you made me a clickbait issue, and I think you owe me an apology for that, quite honestly.
Mayor, the news media does not sleep, but
it should do journalism that supports a headline. And that headline was unfortunate relative to what was going on in the entire city.
Well, people were talking about it, and I want to get to the bottom of it because I think I proved what happened. And if we look at Imperial Court in Bentwood, Matt, if you put that graphic up here, Imperial Court in Bentwood has valuations for land for things that are greater than 1 acre versus things that are less than 1 acre. And this is a similar situation that happened to you on Bishop Street.
Correct.
And so what we saw was an increase in land value for these smaller parcels going way up, while the parcels that had larger than 1 acre sometimes went down. And then if we pull up, Matt, Bishop Street, and by the way, one of the things that I think citizens ought to know, that if you can find well-known, remarkable people or public people in San Angelo, a lot of people have taken their information off the appraisal district website. For example,
as an elected official, they have the right to.
Yeah, it's for their own safety, you know. And we'll ask Lane Carter's taking his off, and we'll ask him why when he gets on. But you don't have to have your stuff out there for your own safety. And I don't want to. I hope you have lots of guns. But anyway, if you look at Bishop Street, just going right down the Bishop Street thing, if you notice, you're the only one that has greater than 1 acre. And so, therefore, your land value didn't go up as much, or went down a little bit, actually, than your neighbors. And so I think that was probably an unfortunate thing with the algorithm. Now,
algorithms are one issue, but people put statistics in the computer that create the algorithms.
Right.
So it starts with what you put in a computer system that drives the algorithm that produces the net result.
Right. It is people that ultimately do it, and there's also there is a concerted effort to do. Maybe they measured the less than 1 acre lots by square footage, and the greater than 1 acre or greater than 1 acre by acres. I don't know what they did. We don't, you know, they're saying they're going to be transparent, but we haven't heard about what happened with the appraisal. Now, looking down Concho Avenue, and Matt, if you could put up the Concho Avenue graphic here, and we'll talk about that while that's going on. On Concho Avenue, what we see is we see valuations all over the place. I mean, I started with Tim Condon's Angry Cactus, and I worked my way east. And I don't think anyone was spared, if you look at it. In fact, the closer you get to Miss Hattie's, there's kind of like a bubble of greater than 100% in there. And Miss Hattie's and that's your business, the property value of Miss Hattie's certainly was not spared from the increase.
Yes, and what you have listed here is not complete. Miss Hattie's is a combination of 26 East Concho Avenue. People think it's west, it's east.
Right.
But it's also 24
right.
East Concho. I have two numbers.
And so people don't get confused by that. You have kind of like your corporate offices on West Concho.
Correct.
Where your restaurant is on East Concho.
That's
they're both
correct.
24. And now
they're both 26.
Or 26. And if you get let's get that third thing up with the West Concho. These are the Gunter holdings on West Concho. These are over by A Rock Saloon and downtown San Angelo Inc. And look at the valuations that have gone up. I mean, one of them, it's like 1.6 million? 1.66 million?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it went from...
It's 1.8.
Well, one of these, this is, I'm looking at 24 West Concho, went from 413,000 last year to 1.803 million.
Exactly.
So,
and that's mostly warehouse space, unfinished warehouse space that has no HVAC at all. It's unfinished. So how did it go from 400 plus to 1.8? And that's just one door.
right.
that complex has 3 front doors, 1 middle door that goes up to the office. So they split off 24 West Concho. So you add more dollars to that, so you're over $2 million.
So as an aggregate, I would say that you've suffered a tax or valuation increase similar to a lot of the most
I
egregious
was not
things.
spared.
Yeah.
I
So-
was not, and it's a misdemeanor for anybody to try to influence the tax appraisers.
So you're saying that as the mayor, you can't go over and talk to Tyler Johnson, who's
No.
the lead appraiser?
No, I can't. Oh, can I? I'm sure I can if I want to.
But you can't go
Great.
over there and saying, you're going to keep my land values down.
No. It's
And-
not my right nor my position to do that.
And if you read
in
my-
fact, as of today,
Right.
at this hour, I have not received in my mail the appraisal of my house physically.
Right.
Everybody else has managed to find it and look at it, but I have not received in my office that appraisal of my house.
And we have talked to Tyler Johnson. He says, I have met the mayor one time, shook her hand at an event, didn't even exchange words hardly, except how you doing.
I don't even know that happened. If he said it did,
But he said there's absolutely no collusion on the part of you
There
or
is not.
or any other public official with what he's doing. So we have the blanks of denial, and I think that's enough to talk about. So going forward, what can a city council do? Because
Nothing.
You can't really
It's
can't
not
do
our
anything.
authority to do it. It's called Tom Green County Appraisal District. Tyler Johnson reports to the state comptroller. The state comptroller sets the parameters for how these tax appraisals will be done.
Mm-hmm.
Every county in the state of Texas right now is having the same problem Tom Green County is having, and that is excessive appraisals. And they justify it because of the following reasons. The COVID situation, which kept people with properties not moving. Then we had a supply chain issue, so prices went up, cost of construction went up. And so they're adjusting for all those things that they have not adjusted for in 21 and 22. We were in a bidding war for houses last year and the year before. Those bidding wars have created a problem for people who live in that neighborhood and in a house next door where a bidding war took place. It artificially increased all the valuations, I'm assuming, on that street. A home, a 1930 home with no improvements, just because it sits next door to a 1930 home with major renovations, is going to get bumped up as if that house was the one that was built and redone or renovated. There's no way there's enough staff at Tom Green County Appraisal District to physically go into every single piece of property and do an appraisal. Nor is there enough staff in the city of San Angelo, private appraisals, to be hired to have your property appraised to prove these wrong. And that's one way that you can win the war on adjusting yours down, is to have it appraised. But we only have X amount of time for everybody to do that. And then that costs you money as well, even if you could hire someone to do it. The process is flawed.
So going forward, you want people to everyone to protest their valuations, even if they can't figure out why or they don't have a good
They
reason?
have to. If you don't use the process, then you're not using the things that you've been given to do that. Now, some people might say, I'm not going to protest because I know my appraised value. I would never sell my house for that appraised value. I would sell my house for more, market value as we call it.
Right.
So there are people who won't protest because they're going, it's still below market rate.
Right.
And those people shouldn't protest. On the other hand, there are properties like my office building that is so out of line with any price tag that I could ever put on that building. It's unrealistic. It's old. It's not improved.
Right.
And it can't jump that much in 1 year. It's unrealistic. And those are the properties. There was a lady who was at the meeting last Thursday who said last year her property was a $5,000 price tag. This year it's $58,000 and she's made no improvements to it. Well, that's because land prices went up. People were moving out of larger cities over the past 2 years to get to smaller cities like ours. They expected better value, quality of life. But they're finding even in our city, the taxing of their properties is so excessive, it's no longer more affordable to live here than where they were, perhaps.
All right, so one last question. We have a reporter in Midland who's gone and talked to the Midland Appraisal District. We want to know if we're having the problem here. Certainly, they're having it in the tall city, right?
Yes.
And the lead appraiser told him that no, their properties pretty much went up about 5%. The land values went up about 5%, and they've had no problems. Have you heard of any problems in any comparable cities?
There was an article in Concho Valley Live today that was talking about another county. When I was talking to Drew Darby, he said all of us in Austin have received phone calls from people back home complaining about their appraisals. So it's not a single Tom Green County appraisal district issue. Midland prices may have, over the past few years, been accelerated because of the oil and gas industry. So on an annual basis, theirs might have continued to grow to the point that market value is closer to appraised values. But we also know in past years, when we've been in an oil and gas expansion time period and real estate market went up, it never goes back down.
Right.
No one bought a home in 2014 that is appraised less today than then, and they were high prices then because of the oil and gas expansion then.
Final question. I know the last one's supposed to be the final question. Goodfellow Air Force Base, affordable housing. What is our message right here? If we're going to keep raising our taxes like this, or keep raising our appraised value, our taxes and how much we got to pay for our property becomes in jeopardy. How are these guys going to afford off-base housing?
It's bigger than Goodfellow. You know what? It's people who work for a living, who live in apartment buildings. Those property owners, those apartment buildings will have to increase the monthly rent because their appraised value has gone up dramatically. So yes, it impacts Goodfellow Air Force Base, but it's going to impact everyone who lives in an apartment, because those taxes will be used to increase rates. And most people's income, most people's hourly wages will not be increased at the same level and growth of the tax appraisals.
And the second problem is an apartment is a rental property, is not the homestead exemption is not applicable.
That's correct.
So you don't have the 10% increase cap on those.
Correct.
So
it will impact everyone who lives in an apartment. And yes, it will impact Goodfellow, because again, the government, the military will not increase their, quote, per diem, if you will, to accommodate the increases in taxes. But apartment living will become very expensive. And
right.
Wages aren't growing at that rate.
Yep.
We know that from here at San Angelo Live. Our wages aren't growing at that rate. Isn't that right, Yantis?
That's right. We're all going to have to start Ubering to be able to pay our property tax bill.
Listen, people shouldn't fear losing their home. They shouldn't fear having to find the money. Because if they have to find the money and go borrow the money to pay the tax, then there's other things they can't do. Mm-hmm. And people who've lived in the same home for years have not seen, because they haven't sold their home, haven't seen the same increase that someone who sold their house last year and because there was a bidding war benefited from. This is a crisis. You know, this is a war on people's lives and livelihood. Mm-hmm. It's money people don't have. It's money they didn't know to save up for. It's money they'll have to borrow to pay.
Right.
It's unacceptable that we're in this crisis and at this time in our lives. People, this is not right. And the legislators need to deal with it. They've set the parameters that are creating this crisis. And they're doing it when they've also legislated that we can only have a 3.5% growth in our property tax base. Well, if you can only have a 3.5% increase in your property tax base, why are we appraising this high so people have to go protest it so they can bring it down? The process is so flawed.
And labor intensive.
Very labor intensive.
Yeah.
People, And many people don't know how to go and protest. They can fill out the form, they can show up, but they don't have all of the credentials necessarily to fight the war on their property tax dollar. And again, people have to write a check. It's a dollar sign, it's not a percentage sign.
Right. Well, Mayor Gunter, we got to get going, but I appreciate you coming in today, explaining all of these things. And also, I mean, it's pretty heartfelt.
Absolutely, and you know, you've come under fire, Mayor, because you're the mayor, and we appreciate you standing up and going through this for us and with us, and I think the citizens of San Angelo should be happy that you're where you are and doing what you're doing. Thank you.
I will fight the good fight. I don't know I'll make a difference, but I'm going to fight the fight.
That's what it takes.
We know you're looking for a truck. And of course, you're looking for a great deal. We've got the trucks and we've got the deals. Get a brand new 2023 Ford F-150 STX 4x4, just $475 per month. And right now, you can get $1,000 in free Ford accessories. And you can only find these at Jim Bass Ford, Houston Hart at Arden Road, or 24/7 at jimbassford.com.